Thanks, everybody. Just ahead tonight, new reporting on the president trying to pardon himself and how quickly that might happen. First, the man who warned us all the last time that unless removed from office, the president would do something dire again. House Intelligence Committee Chairman and lead impeachment manager, Congressman Adam Schiff. Chairman Schiff, you were front and center for the first impeachment more than a year ago. This time there were some Republican votes. How much different did it feel?
Well, I think it was very different a year ago. Today, we stood in the same place in the House chamber that was almost overrun by a mob incited to violence by the president. We moved with incredible alacrity to address this danger that the president poses every day he remains. That's much different than the lengthy investigation we did of the president's last abuses of power. But this felt very familiar in the sense of the president's character or lack of character has been known from day one. There's nothing that's surprising that has taken place. He is who he is, as we pointed out during the trial. And the odds that he would again try to cheat in the election, we said were 100%, and that was all too tragically the case. So there's certainly a lot of familiarity about it, but the magnitude of the harm to our country is just beyond comprehension.
I was really surprised by, I guess I wasn't surprised by it, but a lot of the arguments that we heard today from Republicans in the House who chose to side to not try to make the president face any responsibility for this, the argument really just seemed to be, well, there's a double standard. There were protests this summer, and there was violence at some of the protests, and what about that? This whataboutism. There was not a full-throated defense of the president by many people in the party. I guess they were too embarrassed to actually really try to do that.
Well, that's true. The president, of course, is the prime propagator of whataboutism. We've seen that for 4 years now. So they're following his example, and 140 or more of those members. Even after this bloody insurrection, we're back on the floor 3 hours later, pushing out the president's lies again, challenging the election again. And they realize that if they were to indict the president by impeaching him, they're really indicting themselves. So clearly, that group of 140, 2/3 of the Republican conference, they weren't going to be moved to suddenly honor their oaths. But I would have liked to have seen more than 10 of the rest. Recognize the severity of what this president did and the need not only to remove him, but to telegraph to any future occupant of that office that if a president does anything like this again, they will be impeached and removed from office.
I don't believe that, the 74 whatever million Americans who voted for this president this time, that all of those 74 million people approve of what occurred on the Capitol. I just can't believe that. I think most Americans abhor violence and would abhor what they saw. But how do you convince the country, the tens of millions of people who do legitimately believe that this election was stolen? And there's good people who do believe that. A lot of them. How do we as a nation move forward without those tens of millions of people at least coming to the understanding that yes, this was a fraud. The president has been lying. It's been a grift and a fraud, and the election is legitimate.
Well, I think this is one of the most important and one of the most difficult questions for the country going forward, and that is we get our information from very different places now. And there's a whole information ecosystem where if you want to live in Donald Trump's fantasy land, you can. You could tune into Fox Primetime or OAN, or you can read Breitbart or the Daily Caller, and you'll get nothing but the regurgitation of his lies. It's hard to break through that. Now, I think one of the important and salutary things about an impeachment trial is you do get to reach people who are not watching the news all the time. And it's an opportunity to reach those whose minds are still open to persuasion. And I think you're absolutely right, Anderson. I don't believe for a minute that the 70 some odd million who voted for Donald Trump condone this kind of violence. I think it is a small percentage of his supporters, but nonetheless, a small percentage obviously can do great harm to the country. And we need the much greater multitude of his supporters to understand the facts of the election, that Joe Biden not only won, but won convincingly, and that they've been fed a lie. And frankly, that they've been fed a lie not just by the president, but by their own members of the House and Senate, and they should hold them accountable.
Chairman Schiff, I appreciate your time. Thank you.